my gosh, yeah, that's right. Lisa makes the best coffee latte concoction.
It's a Belletti, Belletti, I think. It's just like a little Italian
Oh, the
thing.
Italian Belletti thing, yeah.
And then with coconut butter and vanilla stevia from Ormica.
Ugh, heaven. All right, what do we got? Hey, Madeline. How are you? Good to see you here. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Wake Up Wednesdays, where we work to stay awake in our waking dream. My name is Nicole, and
I'm Lisa. It's so great to be here and to dive in today with you again.
Yeah, so as always, we have a really great topic, and the topic that we'll be going into today, there's sort of three, but they kind of intertwine together, but it's fear, grief, and compassion. And the reason we chose these topics are because I don't know about you guys, but we both can feel and experience, not even in our own experiences, but in other people's experiences, the fear that is present in our world right now. And with that fear comes a lot of grief that we're holding on to and most likely not processing in the healthiest way.
But also the loss that leads to the grief. I think that's a big piece, and I know we were just talking about it all morning, but
we'll get into that for sure. Yeah,
we just didn't mention
it. So let's talk about fear, and in the capacity that's happening right now with this pandemic, with the coronavirus, with all the things that are just present in our world right now. There's a lot of fear, right? And fear comes in many capacities. We have fear can be instinctual. Fear can come from something that has been taught to us. Fear can be learned from past experiences. Right now, the fear that I'm witnessing that is present is, well, obviously the very obvious one, fear of getting sick, fear of being shamed or judged for your decisions, fear of losing a job, fear of not getting a job, fear of losing your business, fear of losing relationships. There's so many different opposing beliefs and ideas that are literally breaking down true, like, loving, valuable friendships, at least that I've seen and noticed in other people. And then there's the unconscious fear that we aren't even aware of, but we're reacting from, right? So there's all these fears that are present. And ultimately what Lisa was saying is when there is fear, it equals loss. So there is a fear, first of all, of loss. So all the things that I said is related to losing something, losing a job, losing your health, losing friendships, losing your control, losing the way things were, having to do things differently, endings, right? So losing something, there's a lot of endings right now and a lot of beginnings. So with that, there's fear of loss. And so there's this kind of cyclical thing with fear and loss. So there's a fear of loss, and then loss of all the things that we were afraid of, losing that, there's more fear that happens, right? And so there's this cycle of fear and loss, fear and loss, fear and loss. And that's what we're in right now. And when we are in that place of fear, the next thing that comes after that is loss. And after that, we get into grief, which Lisa's going to go ahead and speak to a little bit right after she gets me this delicious coffee.
I know, if we only had a coffee
I wish
shop.
all of you can taste this right now because it's making my day so much better.
Okay, so I want to share with you a little bit out of a book. I did a lot of research, and it's called Understanding Loss and Grief, A Guide Through Life-Changing Events. This book is by Nanette Burton Mongaluzzo. I hope I didn't butcher it. But it was a really great read. It informed a lot of the research I was doing on transitions. And I wanted to bring up, because we always do, Nicole and I, how important our body and our physiology is in this conversation, because the physiology can actually become the thing that helps us stay conscious.
Yes.
Because I think the hard part that a lot of us might feel is that we'll start understanding things even right up here with the thinking mind, but then when life happens and we go to sleep in our waking dream,
it's a thinking mind, but it's not a conscious thinking mind. It's just thinking.
Yeah.
There's actually no conscious awareness of what is being filtered through the mind. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So we'll talk actually specifically about this a little bit. So every time we experience something significant, our body will remember what happened long after our conscious mind has stored the item away. And
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to bring that in because our body becomes kind of that conduit of dialogue for us to invoke the thinking mind, to bring in the consciousness, right? So when we have those uncomfortable feelings, emotions that come with grief and that come with loss, those emotions are there to wake us up. Because what I also wanted to share is something we've talked about before, which is how our mind works and responds through the nervous system. The amygdala, or the caveman or reptilian part of our brain, responses to all the things that are happening inside of us and outside of us. So also to speak to the fear, if we've had loss in the past, right? And then we're taking on like the messages that maybe we're getting from the media or whatever, the people around
and just
us.
even in our lives. And we want to go into that reactive state, which completely changes your brain chemistry, because you're no longer in your adult rational thinking mind when you're getting triggered. So you're unconsciously reacting because your entire physiology changes.
So here it is. Your body is going to let you know when you're going reactive. And oh my gosh, how cool, because when you get that, you can actually get conscious in that moment. You can make a choice to bring your thinking mind forward. It's the gift that we have being human, right?
Something that I always say is the soul speaks through the body and the ego speaks through the mind, and we need both of them to interact. But most of us stay so up here in our mind and our personality and our ego that runs the show. So there's no presence to the body and what's happening. When we have presence to the body and we can actually feel what's happening, the soul is speaking to us, the soul and the ego can start to communicate together, the body and the mind, the personality and your physiology, like all of that can start to connect so you can have conscious thought rather than unconscious thought.
And actually another way to also say that is when it's connected, you can get conscious, right?
Yes.
When it's connected, it brings you into consciousness.
We have a few comments here. Bringing the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And we were going to get there too, so thank you for bringing that up, because we always have a conversation beforehand. Create mismatching experiencing. Exactly. Thank you, Sean. 100%.
So when we're able to bring that consciousness in, we can begin to influence our mood, our behaviors. We actually can alter our physiology. There was another piece that I wanted to share out of this book that was on the body's response to loss and grief. Emotions are made up of physiological responses, subjective interpretations, consciousness, and mental states. Emotions are influenced by our past life experiences, growing up, culture, personality, overall temperament. And here it is. It's the chemicals that are a part of the functioning body. Our body actually produces so many chemicals. We have a pharmacy in our brains. And hormones and neurotransmitters such as cortisol, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and others can help us in managing our emotion, which is what happens when people go on pharmaceuticals. Is it's those antidotes. So when we're upset due to loss or due to a loved one, that messes with our inner pharmacology. Our cortisol levels will rise, our serotonin levels get messed up with, and our dopamine levels as well. So I just wanted to point that one of the best things that we can do is to produce the oxytocin. And how we do that is through bonding, is through connection.
And behind all of that is compassion, right? So
yes.
So that would bring us into compassion, but is there anything, I do want to tell a story, but is there anything more we want to say about fear and grief? Besides that, it's very present in our world right now. And to get present, if you're not present to fear and grief in your life right now, get present to it, because I can almost guarantee that it is present somewhere in your life right now. It's certainly happening all around us, even in our small interactions. And I've had big interactions, but I want to share this small one because I was very present to the fear of others and my fear happening in this very moment. So I was at the grocery store ordering something at the deli portion, and my mask was on, and she couldn't hear me, and so I wasn't thinking, and I just pulled my mask down to say something, and she got very angry and pretty much told me that she would not serve me if I didn't put my mask back on, and it was a very, loud and snotty and very attitude sort of way, which was coming from her place of fear, right? And so immediately I literally felt my physiology change. I could feel my body responding because my brain chemistry was changing. And I had to take a moment, and I had to literally, she saw me go through this whole process, mind you. I had to drop into my body, close my eyes, and take a deep breath, because I unconsciously did it. I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted her to hear me. And when I did that, I was able to get back to my rational thinking mind, and I was able to then I was able to be present with her again. She noticed that I took a moment to take a stance and to not react to her attitude, because then I realized there's so much fear coming from her. I could have shamed her. I could have yelled at her. I could have said, I'm leaving, you're not getting my business now. Like, there's all the ways that I could have reacted to her, but somehow in that experience I was meant to have, I truly dropped into a place of compassion for this woman, because I could really sense the fear that she had and whatever she was grieving in that moment. And that's such a small example, but to literally be present to all of these interactions throughout our days with people that we don't know, strangers, and especially the people that we love and we know, because it's really easy to react to those people because they're in your life, you know that they're going to love you, and so on and so forth.
And that kind of made me think of like that one live that we did where we were talking about the unconscious holding. And I just wanted to shed light to how, we're all holding so much, right? So just like that woman, we don't know what she was holding. She doesn't know what you're holding. So when we can find and tap into that vibration of compassion, we open the heart.
Right. So as we said before, compassion is the antidote to grief, to grieving, and to fear, right? It's a completely different vibration. It's obviously more positive vibration, and it's easier said than done, right? But when we can have the awareness that compassion needs to be present in order for any healing to take place. In fact, there's this quote by a guru, a teacher named Almas, and he says, only when compassion is present will people allow themselves to see the truth. And that can't be more true than any other words that I've said all day in this live. I want to read a few definitions of compassion that I really resonated with me. So the definition of compassion is the ability to understand the emotional state of another person or oneself. So if compassion is defined as deep, genuine sympathy for those who are suffering, we have to be willing to dissolve self-centeredness, to step outside of our comfort zone, and cultivate compassion by realizing we are not alone in our experience and in our suffering. That is compassion. When someone comes to you with fears that they're holding, our response in our culture is to just say what Lisa said before. What was it? You should, or you shouldn't.
Oh, yeah. So putting it into that box of should, right, wrong, the duality.
And just, we're so easy and so quick to say, just get over that. You shouldn't feel that way. You're better than that, whatever it is. But in order to fully process through the fear and the grief, you have to be present with it. And so if you're someone that wants to practice compassion and someone comes to you, or even yourself, don't feel like you need to give advice or tell them that to feel a different way. Just allow them to be in their fear and their grief, and allow yourself to be in it too. The only way to get through it is to actually feel it. I'm sure you've seen that meme a trillion times, but it's honestly reality. It's the truth.
And then the other piece to add to that, as far as compassion, is the self-compassion. I mean, things are always transitioning. We always have changes. We always have beginnings and endings. With every beginning, there's an ending, or with every ending, there's a beginning, right? And so I worked a lot in grief and loss and
Yes.
bereavement.
She worked
with,
in hospice.
people passing.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is the majority of what I did there was normalize the process. And then what I realized when I started to do more research is that, like, this is just always happening. It's just sometimes it's people, sometimes it's ways of being, sometimes it's our experience of life, sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's a relationship. So, you know, there's always transitions that are taking place. And the more that we can find our compassion for ourselves through that process and normalize that process, like, you know what? It's okay to grieve, and it's okay that we're holding on to this stuff. It's just we need to bring the consciousness to it, bring it forward, so we can metabolize it rather than suppress it and repress it, because it shows up again in different ways.
Yeah. Which actually just came to me that every time we come to these lives with a topic, the ending is always the same.
Wake up!
Presence and being conscious is allowing yourself to be present to what's happening in your body. But we choose to not because it's so uncomfortable. So we'd rather stay up here to create a story about what's happening than be present to what's actually happening in the body, which ultimately will provide healing, will provide insight, divine messages, wisdom, and all of the other things that we're actually looking for. And we can actually have that mind-body connection of what's happening, why we're experiencing fear, why we're experiencing sadness, grief, depression, loss, all of the things. And hopefully from that place of presence, we can tap into more of that compassionate energy.
And I want to add to that, as I pass the chalice, the importance of, you know, we all have a storyteller inside of us. We're always telling a story. There's always a narrative happening, you know. And when we're going through these processes that invoke fear, invoke loss, invoke grief into our lives, and we're evolving through these transitions, we also have the ability to bring consciousness to our narrative and to our voice and the story that we're telling, because it's our stories and how we get to know each other that turn into our realities, right? And if we're not doing it consciously, then we're doing it unconsciously. And I remember a time in my life where I had a really negative story. And every time I met someone, like, I would just want to, like, enroll them into this kind of like my sob story. And then I realized what I was doing. And then I changed my story. And that year I had, like, the most success and so many breakthroughs because I stopped enrolling people into my victim story. Right?
Well, Buddha says we create the world with our mind. However, before that, my teacher, Gabor Mate, says before we create the world with our mind, the world creates our mind. And so it's learning where you've been programmed and conditioned and where your belief patterns are coming from, which those are all passed on to you for whatever reason, and all of us have them. But when you became aware that you were playing the victim role, right, after you realized, okay, this is the world has created my mind, has programmed my mind to be this way, then you realized this isn't okay, I'm going to shift this, and then you allowed your mind to create the world, which is why you had that fascinating, amazing year of clarity and growth and transformation.
It was like a big catastrophe in my life, and I changed the story. And in changing the story, I took responsibility.
And
that's another one. It kind of always
the ability to respond to the world and to take your power back.
Yeah. That's literally where I go 100% of the time when I'm feeling a loss of power. Is as hard as it is, where can I be 100% responsible for the way it is and the way it's not? And then from there, I can at least access a little bit of inner fire to make a difference. Yeah. So,
does anyone have any questions or comments? I know we've got a few comments here, so we'll go ahead and read those off. I need to work on not getting back into my body during a situation like that.
We all do.
We all do.
That's why we're here.
And I'm not saying that I'm, that much of a light being in all of my situations, but I was very present to that in that moment, and it's for sure a practice.
Yeah.
Value the uniqueness of another, for sure. self-compassion 100%. That has to come first, usually before, well, actually, they can
kind of oscillate.
Yeah, exactly, now that I really thought about that. Okay, we got some high fives, some thumbs up. You ladies are amazing. These conversations help allies of injustices, be that it racism, things going on in the community. Yes, absolutely. The LGBTQ community. We are all in charge of our narrative and can change it at any moment. It's not serving us. Exactly. We love all of your comments. Thank you for tuning in. It's been such a pleasure to share our thoughts with you, because really that's all they are. We're always in conversation about this. We also lead women's circles together, both of us. Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit about the work you do?
Yeah, so I work with people. I integrate yoga therapy and psychology as a way to empower people to better have like a sense of agency and regulation in their lives, and to really connect to their wholeness.
Beautiful. We both teach yoga. We both teach yoga therapy sort of style. We both teach meditation, breath work, things like that. So check us out on our Instagram. Hopefully we can see you at one of our virtual events or in-person events. I also work with women and helping them reconnect to their bodies, reclaim their body sovereignty, understand their the changes that their psyche and their emotions and their bodies go through every single month, and ultimately empower them to really cherish their womanhood. So message us, and we hope to see you back in 2 weeks on Lisa's Instagram for our next Wake Up Wednesday. And if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, then please send us a message, and we're offering you many blessings and so much love.
Yes. Stay awake.
Love that.